So chapter 5, we're going to be looking at ratios and proportions. And we're just starting out today, just looking a little bit at like what's a ratio, what's a rate, and so on. Today's stuff isn't super deep. It's more just kind of an intro into the different things. So I don't think today's stuff will be too tough. A whole lot of blessing going on. So, okay, a ratio is a comparison of two quantities. And by quantities, we really just mean like numbers, you could say, or amounts. I'll maybe write amounts underneath it. But a comparison of two quantities by division. So if we were to talk about the boy-girl ratio is 1 to 2, which maybe reminds you of a song. 2 girls for... Okay, people don't listen to the Beach Boys anymore. All right. This was the 60s. Everybody would know what I was talking about. All right. So you could write it as this way here, 1 to 2. That's totally legit. Another way that they'll sometimes write ratios is they'll do a 1:2. Or sometimes they'll do a fraction, a 1 to 2. But they always do the numbers in the same order, no matter which three of those you have. They always do the 1 first and then the 2 second. And that matches up with what they said here, boy, girl. What they're saying is there's 1 boy for every 2 girls. Or there's 2 girls for every 1 boy. But so if you were to have 5 guys in the room, there'd be how many girls? 10. Because if you have this 1 to 2 ratio, for every 1 guy, there's 2 girls. So 5 guys, then we'd have to have double that many girls, 10 girls. Good? So if we were to do a couple examples then quick. So we're doing ratio of shaded to unshaded. So the number of shaded ones in here would be? 5. So I'm going to just write it like all 3 of these different ways. So there's 5 shaded squares. So you could say it's a 5 to 4. So it's a 5 to 4 ratio that way. You could replace the word 2 with a colon and say 5 to 4 this way, 5:4. Or as a fraction, what goes on top? 5. And it doesn't go on top because it's larger. It goes on top because it's that shaded. It's always the shaded listed first if we say it's shaded to unshaded. Okay on those? All right, so the next one, we could say 4 to 2. So 4 to 2. But if we have a 4 to 2, we probably should change that to 2 to 1. And that's the line I skipped up above. Or maybe I didn't skip it up above, but maybe I'll add it in. Thinking of a different class's notes. So if you have this, if you can reduce, it's best to reduce it. So the 4 to 2 becomes kind of this 2 to 1 ratio. Or you could write those with the colon, 2:1, or 2/1. In math, we're big on simplifying things. So often if you have a fraction of 2/1, they just would write it as a 2. Because it's a ratio, I would leave it as 2/1, just so it has 2 parts. That's okay because it's a ratio. We okay on that? A rate. So a rate is going to be a ratio. So it's a ratio. So everything that we just talked about above applies, but it's a ratio where the units are different. So when we're looking at the different examples before, these last 2 examples, it'd be 5 shaded boxes, so 5 boxes to 4 boxes. So it's if you were to write it in, I wouldn't mess up your notes with this, but you could say 5 boxes over 4 boxes. But the units would be the same, so you can just kind of cancel out the units and say it's a 5 to 4 ratio. A rate then are going to have different units. If we go down to example 4, so we used to pull a sailboat, 1,500 miles, 2 key largo. Looks like I have a little bit of a typo. In 28 hours, what's the average speed, or what's the rate in miles per hour? So if we have this miles per hour, per means division. So what we're saying is we're going to do miles divided by hours. So the number of miles would be?
1,500.
Perfect. So 1,500 mi over 28h. So here we can't cancel out the units, miles and hours. They won't cancel. You're just left with, that would be your ratio then as a fraction. Or if you wanted to, and I'm going to leave a little space, you could say, well, it's 1,500 miles, then do the word 2 or do the colon, 28h. So those are ways that you could do ratios. Fair enough? And technically, we should go and try to reduce those. You could divide the numerator and denominator both by 2, and then maybe you can do that a second time. So you could reduce it that way. But I'm going to jump ahead to this unit rate. A unit rate is going to be one of these rates. So different units, it's a ratio or a fraction or something like this. But a unit rate, the bottom number or the second number has to be 1. So I'm just going to write denominator is 1. So denominator, I'm going to assume that we're going to write it as a fraction, is or equals 1. So if we were to take a calculator, punch in 1,500 divided by 28 and reduce this fraction, we'd get approximately 54 mi. So 54 miles every 1 hour. And I got that 54 just by doing this divided by that. So the unit rate then is going to be this right there, that you go 54 miles every 1 hour. Or you could say 54 mi colon 1h if you wanted to. But questions at all? That's the whole section, really.
That seems easy.
Yeah, I don't think it's too bad. So, cool.